We all know that closing sessions often are very painful and boring. So we will try to liven it up a little bit. It will be basically in two parts. One is I'm going to abuse my role as a moderator to ask our distinguished panelists some questions and takeaways. And then I will ask some questions to you, all of you. That's why I asked that the pigeonhole be kept open, and so that we can collect all your views as well. So, without much ado, let me start by asking somebody who is going to be a future graduate, and who will be meeting the challenges of a changing job market. And we'll try to figure out whether her alma mater has actually prepared her well, or whether our university is future ready or not, and those things. Let me ask this to Leila. Leila Akhmetova, who is the outgoing, she's a third-year student, now going on to the fourth year. And in humanities, social sciences, she was running the student government last year. She's the executive director for the Harvard Student Project. And obviously, just to put a little pressure on her, we look at her to be one of our future great alumni, obviously. But before that, before becoming a future great alumni, we have to find out whether she feels that she's future ready. So, lead us off. What's your takeaway from these past day and a half? And are they getting you closer to your goal?
How many time do I have for my answer?
You have all the time in the world.
Okay, thank you. So first of all, good evening, dear ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, President Katsu, for providing us, me and other students, with such an incredible opportunity to be a part of such a fantastic event and to be on the same stage with the prominent speakers who we had yesterday and are having today. Actually, I was planning to prepare my speech in advance. I was planning to have some kind of professional, very smart speech with deep message, but when I was attending yesterday's panels and today's ones, I understood that we all are talking about actually the same thing, but the only what differs is the perspective. So we got a chance, I personally got a chance to listen to the faculty representatives, to the presidents of universities, just to know how they feel, how they prepare future graduates. I got a chance to listen to the representatives of the companies, of my future employers, just to know what they are looking for in me as in the future graduate. And now maybe it will, now I think it will be I think it will be important for the universities and for my future employers to think what I feel as the student, as the future graduate. So the one very interesting question was asked today's morning, I guess, on this session of global imperatives and local relevance regarding the readiness of our local companies to have future-ready graduates. And this question was really thought-provoking. And I think personally that maybe some of the companies are ready because of the new culture they are adapting to, because of the internationalization, because of the understanding new trends. However, I do sincerely believe that we have a lot of companies and a lot of organizations in our country that are not ready yet to cope with us, to cope with skilled and qualified professionals, as I do believe I will be after graduating. I think this is the main reason of the issue. I think is important. We all were talking about artificial intelligence. We all were talking about our future when we will not have jobs and we will not have. We will have all automatized, and digitalization will take control over the many aspects of our lives. But what I personally, as a student, think to be a really important issue is something called brain drain, because I do witness each year how my friends, my peers, just decide to leave our country to go study somewhere abroad. They are looking for job opportunities somewhere in in Europe, in the United States, in some Asian countries. And I personally, I don't support this perspective. I really do believe that a lot of resources are invested in us, and we have to give something back, as our Yelbasi Nursultan Nazarbayev was telling during this graduation speech. And that is why I do believe that here we can, how to formulate it correctly, here I think the role of the higher education institutions is really significant and important. They have to, not only employers have to be adaptable and flexible, so should we, because I believe that our universities have to grow up adaptive, flexible people. It has to grow up people who are ready to face challenges and to overcome them. And I do sincerely believe that Nazarbayev University is the platform for such a upgrade, let's say. Because, for example, from my personal experience as the member of student government, actually I worked there for 3 years of my studies, and I'm the former president of student government of Nazarbayev University. And from the perspective of student, I can confidently tell you that during these 3 years, all our ideas, our voice, all our initiatives, they were heard by the administration, by the faculty, by the new leadership. And this support and this faith that we felt and we saw in their eyes, that was really something that was driving us to bring even more changes and to think about even more ways how to develop our university and how to develop then our country in the future. I think that is why we have so many student clubs. I don't know how many of you know how many student clubs here at Nazarbayev University. Actually, the number is higher than 150. That's why we have so many social projects, so many social entrepreneurial projects initiated and developed by our students and our alumni. And all these projects, all these endeavors would have been impossible without this support and without, which is more actually important, I think, without the readiness of our university to see how we fail. Because we fail. And when we come with our ideas, sometimes I can see in the eyes that, oh my gosh, you will fail. Like, why are you doing that? But they never tell you about that. They just want to observe how you will go through this process, go through this way, how you will go, fall, stand up, go further, fall, stand up, and each time how you will learn from your mistakes. And this is, I think, the most important skill that we need as future graduates for our future, because you never know really what you are expecting in the future. Okay, maybe some jobs will disappear, maybe not, who knows. Maybe we will have some alternative future we can't even imagine right now. But the skills that we have to have right now, they can be developed within the walls of the universities. And I had my failures, for example. When I was the president of student government, I thought I had strong leadership skills. I was 3 years the student government. I was taking a lot of leadership positions in different projects, even at school. I thought there will be no problems, but I'm actually proud of my student government. We achieved a lot during this year. I'm really proud of 90 people I was leading. However, that was only one side of the coin, and another one was, which I consider as my failure, my personal failure as the president, is that I initially was not able to manage the internal communication in the team, because 90 people, apparently it's too many people in the team. It's really hard to manage all of them. And I'm sure our Department of Student Affairs, Vice President for Student Affairs and International Cooperation, Ms. Katsu, who also loves to remind her students that failure is the key to success. I do believe that they knew about this issue. Student government was existing for so many years, but they have never interrupted in our work. They have never forced us to do something they wanted to be implemented in our work. They were just waiting when students will come up with the decision, with the idea, with the solution by themselves, and we actually did. So here we are, and in the student government right now we have the Office of Internal Management. Maybe this is not something significant for you, but for us, for representatives of thousands of students, team management, internal team management is something that is really important to the whole student community to work well and to achieve even more in the future. And that is why I think that the role of higher education institution, and in particular role of Nazarbayev University in my development, in the development of my peers and my colleagues, is really impressive. And I do believe that the Nazarbayev University is actually not the only platform, not the only institution where students can be heard. I do believe that a lot of universities in Kazakhstan and in other developing countries are moving towards this culture and this new attitude to students, because we are students, we are the same. We are impulsive, we have same passions, we have same ideas, we want to change the world, we want to contribute. And we can do that only if we have support, and only if we have faith, and only if we have an opportunity to fail. And thanks to Nazarbayev University, we had this opportunity. And I do believe, I have one more year to fail and to learn from that, but I do believe that in a year, I personally will be able to go outside of our bubble, which people of external people outside of Nazarbayev University consider us to live in. I will be able to go outside of our bubble and to face the challenges of our world. I will be able to face the difficulties when you are not treated in the same way you were treated at the university, because I failed and because I had this experience before. And I really encourage, just to sum up my idea, I really am here just with my small mission to encourage all representatives of higher education institutions who are sitting here and who were attending these 2 days, just to understand the value of student voice and the value of our ideas in the development of the university, because we all are the same, as I said before, and we all need this support, and without this support, we'll not be able to develop, we'll not be able to become future leaders. And that is why, again, thanks to the support I have received during these years, I believe I can, I believe right now so far, but this is not the limit. I believe I will be able to become a really skilled and skilled and qualified professional. I really believe that due to the experience and due to the knowledge I gained here, due to the attitude I saw here and felt, I believe I will be able to succeed and bring new changes to our community, to give something back to our country, to the population which lives here in Kazakhstan. And I do believe that I'm not alone, and I do believe that this forum, and I really don't want who I can express my gratitude to the person who came up with the idea of having such a platforms, such forums and conferences where people can meet at one place and share their experience and share their knowledge, because I've gained so many information. I have done to think about a lot, and to I believe that all of you have the same, and I believe that thanks to EHELF, thanks to these 2 days, many of you will come back home, come back to your work, and come up with new ideas, with new strategies, how to develop our youth, how to develop our students, how to develop us, and how to develop your employees, if you are an employer, so that they will be able to really stand out and show to the whole world that they are professionals, and that no matter what will be in the future, we will be able to overcome everything, and we will be able to show the education that we've gained before. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Leila. Let me turn to Jonathan. You, in a way, represent the other side. Although you used to be academic, but also in academia, but also you have observed the changing marketplace like nobody else maybe. And you've given a lot of thought about the future of work, the future of the marketplace, the changing world, changing disruptive technologies, artificial intelligence, all the themes that were mentioned. Give us your take as to what have we collectively learned over the last day and a half. Your take. Are we closer to this? Have we made progress in this concept of future-ready graduates?
Okay, let's see. Yes, I actually, I didn't mention this before. My father was a professor, and so I grew up in a home which had a lot of academic debates, and I had the chance to observe all of that as a young person growing up. And I have to say, one of the commitments that I made as a result was that I would not become an academic. Let's see how long that lasted. But it was mostly because I did sort of question, at that point, the value of the debate. So I said, why is so much energy, sound, and fury being expended on what appeared to be so little? Of course, as a young person, one doesn't always appreciate what the stakes are in a debate. And I think that's perhaps some of the things that I've come to appreciate more, of course, as we go along. Sort of what is the role of the educational institution in societal debates, and how does that institution contribute to it? I haven't moved away from the basic idea that it should contribute, and that its value should be measured in the level of positive contribution to society. But it's a more subtle process than simply passing a law or building a company or something that is pretty evident. Ideally, it's a process of collaborative process. It's a process of one that is about ideas and about the changing of the paradigm, to use the Thomas Kuhn metaphor. So that prior to the paradigm change, everything looks the same, and then the paradigm changes and it all looks different. But work has been done to change the paradigm. And I think that's the important work that has to happen in an academic context. It's a safe space, but it's also a space for innovation and experimentation. And it is very much informed by the quality, not only, of course, of the teachers, but of the learners. And I say learners because I think that was something that came across quite strongly in the last day and a half, is that we have to have a broad definition of learning and who might actually be doing the learning. And of course, the teachers are doing a lot of the learning as we go along. I think there was a great example given by, I think it was Dr. Tan, of how collaboration with industry through the students can inform and sensitize the teachers to actually the relevant topics. That I think sort of bridging between the outside, I don't say the outside world, so the world of commerce, let's say, and the world of academia is a very valuable mechanism, and more is better. So what I took away from the last day and a half is, first of all, a great a seriousness of intent, and purpose, which I believe is the foundation for anything that is a meaningful effort, and that everyone uniformly who I spent time with and over the last day and a half had the same level of intensity, of recognition of the importance of the topic. I didn't meet anyone who said that the futures will be just like today. And I think there was a consensus, to my understanding, that there was change. There was no consensus perhaps on exactly what change there would be, but there was consensus there would be change. And with that, I think there was also a recognition that the value proposition for any effort needed to be comprehensive, needed to include not just the educator, but the learner, the private sector, the government, and the civil society, so that it would be a whole of society effort. And then I think finally it was also great consensus around the role and the importance that essentially it was all about the individual, that it's the change at the individual level would be the necessary precondition for a change at the institutional level. And that came across very strongly. I think those are all themes, and I think beyond that, I learned plenty of good examples, and I thought that was encouraging. So I do believe those examples are the grist for the mill of innovation. But equally so, of course, the last day and a half for me raised as many questions as it did provide answers, and which is, of course, a good thing. Notably, we say future-ready graduates, and I'm not sure we have a good definition of graduate at this point. So in fact, I'm not sure that we will have a definition of graduate. Maybe we will have to rethink that term. It's graduate from what and into what and when exactly. I'm waiting to graduate. It hasn't happened yet. My firm, McKinsey, so a good friend, after listening to my life story, once says, you realize this sounds like the world's longest internship. 35 years later, I think she's right. So. So that's one question, is sort of how do we define progress in this context, and it should the metrics, the moments. So that's one. I think there wasn't perhaps consensus either, or at least there's certainly more questions in my mind about the role of technology in this, and the ability of us to leverage the technology in the educational process, as well as in the broader social context of how we get input for the educational process, what it might mean for the educators themselves and their profession. Importantly, the ability to fully engage with the opportunities that technology allows us to reify the educational thinking. So many times we rely on the chalk and talk or the lecture or the ideas, but actually the technology allows us to literally bring the workplace into the classroom or vice versa. And so it really questions how we might want to think about changing the physical environment of the university and a setting to reflect that and break down those walls. But I'm sure there are other questions. The last thing I do think there was consensus on that I took away was that Nazarbayev University is a great place to do this and is establishing itself as a premier institution, not only in the country, but in the region, and if I believe in the world. So, kudos to you, Dr. Katsu, for leading this charge.
Please record this last comment. Now let me turn to Vassilios as a dean of our maybe biggest school, science technology. What is your takeaway? Listen to all the various propositions, comments.
Well, I had prepared a very long set of notes. But first I want to congratulate Leila for not giving her prepared speech. And as I learned today, she's an A student, she will become an academic, right? So you scope the classroom, you see that it's Friday afternoon, very few people left, everybody's tired, right? We have to be entertained. So no notes, I will speak from the heart, it's good. And I will go back to January, President Katsu, when we were discussing the theme for this year's conference. And after a number of trial and error approaches, somebody came up, not me, with the concept of future-ready graduates. I was opposed to the thing. I thought it was just another cliche. I was outvoted, of course, and here we are at the closing of this very, very interesting forum. And I was a cynic at the time because future-ready graduates, who can predict the future? If we were able to predict the future, we wouldn't be in this room doing something else. But nevertheless, we can see the trend. And there are trends that have to do with the digital world that is rapidly changing the face of every human activity, to challenges that have to do with the environment, the aging of the population, geopolitics, and many, many other things that our speakers have touched over the last 2 days. So what do we take out of this? First, it appears that there is a certain commonality from universities around the world recognizing the challenges, along with the technical sophistication needed in today's world. I think there was a very consistent theme of having graduates with developed social skills, communication skills, emotional intelligence, if that can be taught, of course, right? A series of attributes that typically we provide through liberal education. So now we have an even bigger task, because not only we have to be technologically adept, we have to create citizens that are, shall we say, model in this new world. It's a tall task, and it is not very easy to deliver with the resources that we have. Now, of course, there is not one unique model. Every university has a different number of students, operates in a different geographical location in the world, has to answer to different stakeholders, but it all comes down to faculty that will have to deliver this type of education that will prepare the future graduates. Now, I sit back and I think, are we providing this message to our faculty? Do we incentivize them? Or after the end of this forum, we go back to business as usual and basically empower citations and impact factors and metrics? Do we go back and make our organizations go to be in the top 200 universities of the world in some ranking that is of the flavor of the day? All those are lofty goals, no question about it. But if we focus our communities on metrics of that type, we are missing the point of higher education. The cynics among you might say it's very easy to say this from Kazakhstan, you are not ranked yet. If you were up there, you wouldn't make these comments. No, the world is changing on that respect as well. Very recently, the Netherlands has taken a very serious step of overhauling the system of higher education, realizing that the impact of metrics and citations and so on and so forth was disrupting the social relevance of the research. And Netherlands is an advanced country, is in the top 10 of countries in terms of innovation. So it is extremely important that they came to that recognition, and they are rapidly changing now the promotion and assessment system in the universities. This is the kind of signal that will possibly focus our faculty on different aspects of education that are important for producing the future-ready graduates. At the same time, for a university, a young university like Nazarbayev University and many of the universities in our part of the world, we need to have certain goals. And from where we stand, Singapore, we are all very familiar with Singapore, but Singapore and the National University of Singapore today is a very sophisticated institution that has evolved over a number of years. I vividly remember back in '86 when I was a young assistant professor, when NUS was recruiting in the Embassy of Singapore in Washington, D.C., and I almost came to NUS. For a variety of reasons that did not happen, but 4 or 5 years later, my first PhD student in the US came to Singapore, became a professor, long career, he's still there, so I often visit and I know the great things that we are doing. But it will take us some time to reach your goal. It's not easy. And Singapore has the privilege of having a number of institutions that grew together in an entire ecosystem. In our case here, Nazarbayev University is a unique experiment in Kazakhstani higher education, and of course it has to serve as a model for the rest of the institutions. So that's one additional dimension, one additional load that we have in order to deliver on the mission of the university. It all comes down to one thing. If I go back tomorrow to my school, what will I take out of the proceedings of this forum? Practically. Because words are nice, cliches are very nice, we all felt good because we recognize that this is a change in the world, but practically what do we do? I think the message that I got out of the proceedings is that we need to provide more relevance to the education that we deliver to our students. And relevance that has to do with the local context as well as the international one. Relevance that has to be there from the very beginning, because in our traditional educational models, relevance arrives late, typically in the 3rd, 4th year, when the game is practically lost. We have to find ways to introduce in our curricula relevance from the very first year. Those are the ideas of the design center curriculum, project-based work. Yes, we cannot deliver this for thousands of students, but certainly we can make a dent. We can do some baby steps in that direction and see how that works for our institutions. So I would say relevance for our students, relevance for the society that we live in, as well as relevance for ourselves, because this is what will make our mission and our life important.
Thank you. Thank you, Vassilios, for sharing your, in a way, inner thoughts. And I noticed that actually it's not just over the last 2 days that you have been thinking about it, because just for the general public, we just last weekend we had our graduation weekend, and all the schools did their respective graduation ceremonies. And in the School of Science and Technology, Dean Tourassis was, in his speech, referring to the fact that, you know, maybe or most likely we will have failed you because what we are teaching you probably may become obsolete in 5 years, 7 years. So we do hope that what you're going to take away is that you have learned how to learn. And judging from this morning's presentation by one of your graduates, or what was her name again? Almira, yes. I think you can be proud of her, or she did you very proud.
I'm proud of the way of our students.
In terms of showing that indeed, when she was asked, what have you learned at Nazarbayev University? And she said, I learned how to learn. So I think that's a great compliment to the way that you have developed your school and your program. You know, when we talk about future ready, and I go back a little bit, this is my own take, in terms of the challenges that, or the mandates that government and our authorizing environment, or the founder of our university has given us. You know, we have our typical 5 mandates, all our insiders know, from education reform leadership, academic excellence, research excellence, the medical side, and innovation. But I think what's often not recognized is that our founder and those who obviously put us on the map ran tremendous risks. Because it was not a fail-safe proposition under which we were born. It was a very risky enterprise because they put us outside of all university norms in the country, agreed to put together a special bespoke Nazarbayev University law, giving us academic freedom, institutional autonomy, in an environment which would normally not appreciate these things. And this also against many, many detractors. And they have stood their course. No? So in a way, our genesis is actually very much linked to the whole concept of maybe we were allowed to fail, maybe we were not allowed to fail, but you know, we were always sort of teetering possibly at the edge of trying to stretch the envelope to see what is actually doable, what is permissible, and what is realistic. And in this context, we've always talked about, okay, from day one as to what kind of graduates we would like to see. And that led to the whole concept of the graduate attributes. We have 8 attributes that sort of, in our own way, try to combine, in our own language, try to combine the things that Crystal mentioned yesterday, but also, I think this morning, Mr. Langer also mentioned. At the same time, also the concept that I think Chuck also presented, meaning the importance of having both the horizontal part and the deep domain knowledge. So a T-shaped person that we would like to see, a person that has empathy for society, self-awareness, all those things, but you have to have something to be grounded upon, and that is a domain excellence, in a way. That has always been, in a way, our vision of what a future-ready graduate might be, and I feel actually quite encouraged following the day and a half. This is my own takeaway, that we may certainly not be there where we want to be, but directionally, I think somebody said yesterday, the trajectory and velocity. Velocity might be more important than trajectory. Stavros, he's not a physicist, we know. But I think in a way, directionally, I hope that we can, as a Nazarbayev University community, agree that we tend to go in the right direction. However, as I said, we are certainly not where we want to be. And in order to really make sure that our graduates stay future-proof, it's not only future-ready, but future-proving, this is where lifelong learning elements come in, and I'm very grateful that speakers here also talked at length about the importance of learning for life. And we are shameless. We are copying as much as we can from the playbook of Singapore, and be it NUS or SUTD or other eminent institutions, because obviously customized and adjusted to Kazakhstan's realities and the way we do things here, it's something that we feel is our next also step forward in terms of making sure that we can serve our graduates in the same vein as I think Singapore has already developed this serving graduates and alumni for 25 years, 30 years. Somebody yesterday mentioned maybe we will have to serve them for 45 years, given the future life expectancies and bionic nature of future human beings. But I think lifelong learning is the next big part. Before I ask you, the audience, some questions, I also want, before I forget, to take this opportunity to really thank all the speakers. Please don't be strangers to us. Please do come back and grace us with your presence year after year if possible. I want to thank all the participants also from, in particular, not only from Kazakhstan, but from the region, our neighboring countries, but even further beyond, because, bearing with us and, in a way, listening through a conference which is mostly held in English, when you have to listen for 2 days almost non-stop through headphones is not easy, and it's very tiring. So I appreciate very much that you are nevertheless making the efforts to stay with us. I want to thank the organizing group, both our staff as well as students, volunteers, also our volunteers, or our student speakers who have been volunteered into their positions. I think in some ways, for me personally at least, the most gratifying part of our conferences, EHELF, every year is to see our students growing and maturing. And so I've seen Leila also, how she's grown and matured, and your colleagues as well. And that is what probably education is all about, so thank you. With this, and of course our interpreters, so thank you very much, our interpreters. Now, let me ask you a question using Pigeonhole. So the question that I have to you all is, are we closer to the answer of understanding what future-ready graduates are? You can answer simply yes or no. You can add any comments that you like. Let's see. There's a challenging question already, sidestepping my question and saying, okay, how much does NU really actually impact on society here? And there's a question to Leila. somebody who basically answers back or questions back on universities future ready rather than graduates future ready. But first of all, just answer my question in general. Just affirmative, negative.
Go for yes or no.
Yes. It's not a yes or no question. There's 0 votes for yes. 1, 2, 3. We blame it on technology being a little bit slow. But in the meantime,
In the right direction, not the speed. The voting goes in the right direction, but not with the speed that we want.
yeah, the velocity is a little bit slow. Absolutely. Leila, can you comment a little bit on this question? What skills should we have given you more? What should we have done better? You can say that we're perfect, but that's not what I expect.
Actually, I liked a lot the answer of Almira that I unfortunately couldn't be able to listen to. Yeah, so all my experience so far, all my experience in student government, in HPER, even in studies, I think all of that taught me really how to learn by yourself. Not asking for help from anybody, but trying to find new ways, trying to find your own ways of coping with difficulties, and maybe just having someone to guide you and to coordinate your future actions, but making and trying to make everything only by your efforts and only by your only by you. Yeah.
Okay. Now let me push you a little bit. Your own personal career trajectory. Where do you see yourself in 5 years, 10 years?
This is actually a difficult question because I already have an internship after which I will be employed. But I don't know. This is a really difficult question because I don't know which skills I will gain during these 5 years. But I hope I will stay in this sphere where I will still be able to communicate with people, to exchange my experience, my knowledge, to learn something new from other people, and to stay in touch with the trends, let's say, which are developing and which will be developing in the future. Just want to be in trend.
Okay. You're hedging a little bit.
Huh?
You're hedging a little bit, but it's okay.
Okay.
Somebody comments and probably reflects our everyday preoccupation that also Almira mentioned as one of the shortcomings when she talked about her iGEM competition or the project, and she said that the procurement and delivery of the reagents and consumables was very, very slow and difficult. I hear somebody clapping already. So obviously procurement
is proposed at this task.
yes, timely deliver. So we can delegate it to Provost. Any comment there?
No.
But on his behalf, let me tell whoever asked this question or proposed this as a new student, yes, it is our collective task. It's it is foremost on our mind. We will try to design a better mousetrap and how we can do it faster and more efficient. So please bear with us a little bit longer. Somebody adequately said it's complex. Others said that universities, I read before, universities are simply not yet future ready, but then there's one person who says, whether the universities are ready or not, only the ever-changing future will show. However, it's already good news that the universities are ready to discuss and find solutions. So, and it seems that they like EHELF in that sense. Thank you. And then there's a question on the biggest upcoming challenge for shaping future graduates is efficient coordination and communication of different stakeholders, from higher education, professional associations, government employees, and so on. We had this discussion in our last panel, where our university leaders talked about the importance of really establishing not just superficial, but real in-depth coordinating and collaboration mechanisms between universities, industry, and government. I think in Kazakhstan, I think the consensus probably view is that we are still a long way from it, and that in particular, I think as Leila also indicated in her comment, there still is this question whether, not only whether universities are future ready, but whether companies also are future ready. And whether there's this willingness to invest in research and development with local institutions rather than just simply relying on technology transfers. Okay, let's go back. Oh, Professor Tan Yen-Chie, you are very popular. Said 2 votes said thank you. I wonder whether, it says NU student. It doesn't come from your stuff. Okay, there is one person who says that the NU spirit and knowledge should be really disseminated to the far corners of our country, as Kazakhstan is a very good country. Let's hope that the discussions and talk today and yesterday would not just end here. And that certainly is something that is a collective task for us. Yes, point well taken. Thank you. Mr. Miss Anonymous. Okay. Some popular questions are as to addressed to me. May you assess how deeply during the existing of NU academic spirit and ideas of academic policy of NU, how much of it is actually penetrated into Kazakhstan society and the higher education community. So basically, what is NU's impact and how are we today projecting beyond our bubble? Well, I think we are at it. I cannot say that we have really been able to project, but it is on in part of our strategy 2030. Right now, we are simply standing aside, apart from the other parts of the higher education system because of our law. But as you heard yesterday from the speakers, Dr. Vassilios and others, the education law has been amended, and universities are given more autonomy and academic freedom to design their own curriculum and gradually also, hopefully, in recruitment, standard setting, and so on. So in a way, this already is part of our, or I should say my colleagues' tireless work on engaging government, the ministry, as well as the higher education community in this area. I remember that last year there were many sessions with lawmakers that took actually place here in order to work on this revision of the education law. So I think gradually things are moving forward. The annual conference on integrity, academic integrity, that in particular is run by Loretta, together with Katsu, the Humanities and Law University, has started to take off, and now there is something called the League of Integrity, which is supposed to bring together the top 25 universities of Kazakhstan. So I think we start to see gradually examples of how the NU spirit is starting to broaden, and I'm sure the most importantly, again, the thing is that our students talk to each other. I mean, our students talk to their friends in other universities and elsewhere, their friends, and they, in a way, are the best communicators and ambassadors to explain what our NU spirit is about. The one market, I must say, however, just as a reality check, which we haven't really been able to penetrate so far, is Almaty. And I think we need to make a major effort to reach out to the community in Almaty, because it would be pity if we leave the largest urban agglomeration out of our efforts. By now, 15 people have said yes, so it's great. I hope many more will maybe say that, or please also say no. You don't have to just say yes. There's one question, and I will leave it to Vassilios. That one, yes. If you could say one thing, what is it?
I will answer that question, but I also want to point out, with respect to the previous question, the program that Provost Adesida has instituted, of the collaborative research grants, requiring our researchers to work with other Kazakhstani institutions as a condition for the application. And this is Nazarbayev University money, right, that is funding this effort, and I think it's making a lot of impact right now.
Yeah.
Around the country.
Absolutely. Now?
Now the one thing. I would say that our graduates should dare to risk. They should not be afraid of failure. I think we live in a society where everybody is terrified of failure. If you don't accept failure, if you don't recognize failure, you will never improve, you will never become better. I think we are making a lot of effort in unwriting this culturally during our courses, our activities within the university. It is tough, it is not easy, but as young people you have to go forward, try different things. It doesn't really matter in the long stretch of our human lives whether you will spend a year or two not doing something very productive, but the experiences that you will gain, the maturity that you will obtain from that will be valuable for the rest of your lives. Typically, when you are at the level of a recent graduate, there is a set path, employment, marriage, children, stability, right? And you miss on a lot of things. You have to go out, even outside of the country. There's nothing wrong with it for a while. Many of us around this room have done this path, and then we went back to our countries and gave back an awful lot more than just being recent graduates as still in place. So it's a mixed balance there. But to summarize quickly, go ahead, dare to do something different, don't be afraid of failure.
Now, Jonathan, put yourself in my shoes. What would you tell graduates? One word or one sentence.
I'm tempted to say something like, always keep Nazarbayev University close to your heart. Support the school.
Good answer.
No, I think, I honestly, if I was speaking from the market point of view, and I hate doing that because I feel like the outsider, because it is the outside. And that's because when you say for the market, you're sort of setting yourself apart. But let me just put it this from the point of view of the very many people who don't have the opportunity to participate in the life of Nazarbayev University. I think what I would tell them is please participate. Now, please engage. Don't imagine that you can be separate from the outside world. The outside world should be your world, and the outside world should be here too. So there shouldn't be walls. So break down the walls. Failure is part of breaking down those walls. So I actually don't know what failure means at this point in my career. I mean, failure means you did it, you went a different way and you chose a different thing, which is fine. So I believe it just is about being available and being open to the possibilities that you will find, welcoming them and taking them as they come. So yes, go out and go forth and experience the broader world.
Do you agree with these words that were given to you as a future graduate?
Yeah, actually, I totally agree with that definition of failure, that this is not something bad. This is just an experience that you chosen and that you will not choose maybe in the future given the same conditions. So yeah, I totally agree with I totally agree with everything that you've said, really sincerely, and I appreciate this opportunity to listen to this advice sitting here actually. So thank you for such kind words, for being so ambitious and being so passionate to contribute to us and to our development and to our readiness to being future leaders of our country and of the world.
Thank you. Before I close, there's an interesting comment that says, and you started out with, what is it? And you started out with great foreseeing goals of global competitiveness but lacks ambition and courage. Here. Would be happy to communicate with MIT, Harvard, Stanford, NUS, etc. My thoughts, please. So my thoughts are, thank you very much. I think if you feel that we're not ambitious enough, please let me know. I mean, and we can have a side, offline talk, because I would like to hear why you feel that we are not ambitious. Do not despair. We do have lines of communications with all the universities that you mentioned here, from MIT to the Harvards to Stanford, and of course NUS. So, but I would like to hear a little bit more from where you think that we are lacking ambition and courage. Okay.
It's anonymous, so you will not be an answer.
Not now, but on the sidelines, afterwards, or whatever. Please don't hesitate to get.
Let me add something.
Yes.
I think we are ambitious and we have courage, and The actual proof of this is that we have graduates placed in all these universities and many more in the top 20, 30 in the world. In fact, this is the one unique aspect of our graduates that I really enjoy and cherish, that they are brave. They feel that the Nazarbayev University education has qualified them for the world arena, and they don't hesitate a moment to apply to MIT, to Stanford, to Caltech, and I can give you specific examples for all these cases, even for this year. So we are ambitious, we are courageous, but don't forget, this is a young institution considering the lifetime and the lifespan of the universities.
Thank you. Okay, let's go one more to, well, it says the glass is half full. I think we had something else related to faculty, 3 votes. Can you put that on up? The quality of faculty is quite low. This is unfortunately again anonymous. Just look at the publication citation page. Why don't we attract highly cited professors like Katsu? Now, on this one, first let me maybe say that Katsu, like in some ways Westlake and so, has a totally different approach than ours. Because Katsu is a graduate school and graduate research institution. That's why actually they like so much our own graduates that every year about 6, 7 of our graduates go to Katsu to continue their studies and research there. Our mandate, as you know, in the beginning was to make sure that we change the way that higher education, and I stress the word education, instruction is delivered here. So, and then we are moving, as you all know, from the instruction to research and innovation. So that has been the major thrust, and you all know the initiatives that Provost has launched. In that sense, after, so we started to really get into research only over the last 5, 6 years, maybe out of our 9 years. And in that sense, yes, again, we are certainly not where we want to be. And if you look at our strategy, just looking at some of the metrics, by 2025, 2030, we will be, hopefully, in terms of publication, citations, and so on, in a much, much more prominent place. But again, as also Dean Tourassis just said, we're only 9 years old. Although, I must say, I give huge credits to SUTD, only 1 year older than we are, but obviously you're in a way focused much more also on the STEM disciplines and so, have been probably able to also come up with a slightly higher recruitment budget from the beginning in the different ecosystems. So in a way, please don't underestimate the effort it takes to really build up a whole ecosystem from scratch of what a modern style research university should look. So we just, as some of our own colleagues indicated, we are not right now maybe even toddlers, just moving on from the natal stage to the toddler stage. Soon we will be precocious pre-teens, but that will take still some years. Okay. But again, happy to talk. If you want to know more in terms of answers and other things, please do not hesitate to come to me or engage any of our colleagues, be it provost, deans, and so Okay, now there's one question that I saw, and that is the theme of EHELF 2020. Okay. And actually, this is my question to you. What I wanted as another question for you to suggest is just list themes that you think would benefit from further drilling down following last year's and this year's EHELF themes. Remember, last year we talked about reinventing higher education in the age of destruction, technological destruction. We're talking about future-ready graduates and so on. This year, I'm happy to get your suggestions so that we can mull them over as we do our follow-up to this year's EHELF and start to prepare for next year's session. So please, if you can help us, I would be very grateful. Put your thoughts. And in the meantime, some words. I've spoken enough.
I'd like to go back to the previous question, which was provocative, of course, and I would like to say that we have to be extremely careful with metrics and citation impact and measures of that type. They mean something, no question about it, but they require very careful interpretation. I can show you examples of resumes on my desk with very high age indices that are very suspicious, and then we scratch under the surface and we can find publication cartels, citation cartels, and other aberrations of the system, because anytime an organization, an institution, a system depends on one method for assessment of progress, for quality, for promotion, for any process of this type, then intelligent people will find ways around that method. And they will be able to game the system and game the metric and create huge inaccuracies in the way we evaluate scientific and academic work. So, word of caution.
Thank you. Thank you. I think I'm waiting just and keep the pigeonhole open for some time so that you can continue to enter your suggestions. I don't think that we have to go into them, but Loretta was pointing at particular comments that you want us to discuss. Which one is it? A theme, okay. Yeah, I saw one that says how about higher education institutions, value proposition for social change. That's maybe one of the things that we may want to think about. Please please let your ideas come forth. Now, my final words, so I think we have pretty much exhausted our discussions, is a word to maybe our Kazakhstani audience and participants. I know that this university is created with much fanfare. And I also know, in a way, as Kazakhstan has developed so fast over the last 25 years or 28 years since its independence, there are high expectations. At the same time that Kazakhstani, as we all know, are very brand conscious. It's a country which likes to aspire, ambitious, and therefore with ambition come aspiration for big brands. And I saw also, therefore, it's this obsession almost with the MIT, Stanford, Harvard, and so on, as a label of greatness maybe, but also one of the comments which said, and when are you going to produce your first Nobel Prize winner? Okay? And I'm going to tell you what I told the first time I had a similar discussions with the Yelbasi. I told him, Mr. President, over time, We may produce Nobel Prize winners, time will tell. Don't forget that most of their great work was done when they're in the 30s, but they recognized when they're 60 or 70s. So it will take some time maybe, still. But what's more important, in a way, is that we really focus on raising the standard of education, research, innovation here in Kazakhstan. And looking at just the top names will not help in that respect. It's good, as our Dean said, that many of our graduates, indeed, if you look at the list of where our graduates go for their future, further studies, indeed, all the universities that were mentioned here figure quite prominently. So, we know that our instructional product is very good. But now we have to make sure, and this is one of the tasks, and Leila already indicated it in her speech, and that is, how do we make sure that those who go abroad do come back? So that it's not just a form of brain drain, but we actually make sure that they come back enriched, with more wisdom, more experience, and come back ready to further help the development of Kazakhstan. I think that's, in a way, what we should all be looking at, and that means our university has to also think about how we can contribute to the overall improvement in the business climate, in the investment climate, rule of law elements, and all the things that I think everybody knows that are currently still under development for countries such as Kazakhstan. And the best way to go about it is by being very principled as an institution and having the emphasis on academic integrity, personal integrity, on merit, and all these things are basically a good building foundation for us to move forward. Thank you very much. With this, let me close our session, but I'll ask our organizers to keep Pigeonhole open for a little while so that you can think and continue to think and come up with great suggestions for next year. And thank you very much. It's been a marvelous.